if you look at that marker, it is around designing actions. So you together with the client are designing actions based on the context of what's coming out in from the client, and of course, what the client set as their measure of success or progress for the session, what they want to make progress on. So you're having this holistic conversation on designing action. It's not a one sentence. It is a good exploratory conversation.
Excellent. So yes, we are live. We're alive.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm
now
live.
I'm live.
Live and alive.
So today's webinar is about CC 8.
8.
There's a reason I don't have a credential yet, you guys, because I clearly got my CCs confused. Anyway, so I have a thing I want to say to the two of you, and it's about the value of chaos, that you can also grow through chaos. And the reason I say that is because you're going to talk about, you know, what do we do now that we know that there's stuff that needs to happen, building action plans, etc., growth. And I've recently been thrown into the universe's push for growth through a little chaotic thing. Its name is Pixel. It weighs 8 pounds. It is absolute chaos incarnate. I would show you, but I don't know how. But basically, I'm pretty sure he was raised by squirrels. Not even joking, because he keeps digging in the 3 plants that live inside the house during winter, would then live outside when he sprouted from catnip. So he keeps digging in these plants, and he keeps finding nuts that squirrels had buried in those plants back when it was warm and the plants were outside, and he eats them. Also, he's insane. Also, I tried to get him defertilized and adopted, and he failed his adoption intakes. So that's how I ended up with another kitty, because nobody wants him. But sometimes you need a bit of chaos. So what's been really nice is that even though he got rejected for adoption, and I now am officially like a full-fledged cat lady with my little Pixel. His name is Pixel. He's got a missing pixel on his nose. He's all black on his face, and he's got a little white spot. So that's why it's Pixel. A little chaos, and it's helped. I've been like quite down lately. I do get seasonal affective disorder, big time. And just, you know, life has been happening. Point is that like every time I think of Pixel, every time I see a pile of dirt, instead of, it makes me laugh. So sometimes you just need a little less planning, a little less, here's what I want, and just a tiny bit of chaos in the form of a annoying little pixel kitten to bring joy back into life. So as much as CCA, good job, a little chaos is also good.
Yeah, of course. A little pixel is good for all of us.
Speaking of which, this is not Pixel. This is my original floofball. I love you. She was my original chaos. Anyway, Kocharia, woohoo! So that's my story for today. I am here to say hello, and I think it's pretty funny how the background is blending with my giant streak of gray hair. Isn't that funny?
Where is the gray? Let's see.
Well, it's kind of purple now, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where is the gray?
Thanks, Cindy. And then you're like, oh, yeah. Just like when Sylvester also always says to me, like, oh, you look tired. I'm like, thanks. I hope he's here. Anyway, okay, let's get started.
Yeah.
Ladies, over to you. I will go vanish, but nice to see everyone. Tell us where you're coming from. What are you coming here to learn? CC8/coaching is the right thing. And Komal will drive today's discussion on the kind of productive part of coaching in terms of like, what's next? Like, what do I do? So pretty exciting. I think we're all going to learn something. And Komal, thank you yesterday for a mini coaching session through like 3 text messages, very relevant to today. I will ask Neha to post maybe a screenshot of those text messages because they're literally a masterclass in what you're discussing today. So
Wonderful.
over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Magda. What an interesting story. And that kept me wondering that Pixel got the name and identity with just one missing piece of the color. And I wonder if it wouldn't be missing, what would you call?
I think
What would
Pixel
be
was
there?
being nice because mayhem, chaos, destruction, stressor, all those things would have been not very nice for a very, very otherwise cute kitten.
Yeah.
Okay, Pixel
Reframing.
is well earned.
Yeah, a lot of reframing. And that brings me to what we're going to discuss today about competency 8, which is facilitating client growth. And what is coming to me is the moment anybody thinks of getting coached or think about coaching, what's in the back of their mind is actually action. Like, what action can I do? What action should I do? So this action is something which is right at the beginning point of whenever somebody comes for the coaching. So Cindy, I'm curious, what do we take out of the fact that this action is actually kept at the rear end of the coaching competency? Whereas this is something which people would be really jumping into right in the first point. So before we get into the depth of it, can we just reflect a little bit on, like, why does it come in the end?
Well, the core competency is called facilitating or cultivating learning and growth, right? Cultivating growth, learning in the session, right? Client growth. And actions don't necessarily always need to show up at the end. Actions can show up anywhere as it happens for the client. And the conversation on actions doesn't necessarily, that all conversation, learning, actions, progress, support, doesn't really need to show only happen at the end. When the client, think about this, in a journey of coaching a client, at the end of the session only the client will take away an action. Even if the action is just thinking about things. But when the coach and client meet again, they're always kind of reviewing the action, what's happening now at the beginning of the session. They are reviewing the last session actions. And so that happens right at the beginning of the session, right? And in the review, client may have got excited, they took this action and saw some really meaningful results for themselves. And, after weeks of procrastinating, here's my results. So you can see a whole burst of energy there that the coach should pick up on, do some coaching on. And, if noticing if there's any associated learnings, that can show up right at the beginning too. Coach would ask about that. And then pull in, okay, so we worked on this part last week and it seems like you've taken this action, which is the part or piece you want to focus on in today's session. Because all this is a part of a bigger goal, right?
Yeah.
I think I said too much there. Did I?
No. No, I think it's never too much from you, Cindy. That's great. And before we go ahead, I would like to let the participants know that please go on, put your questions related to, whatever questions you have around this core competency 8, which is facilitating client growth. or any specific challenges that you face in this area? Because I sure am going to bring out a lot of challenges or chaos in the minds of the coaches when we start our journey, as Magda gave me the word, is that so this competency 8 has been considered as the bookend of the coaching, like what begins from contracting sort of culminates at this core competency when we talk about a coaching conversation. And in a way, this other bookend sort of gives an order. But how do we sort of come to this point, or how do you think coaches can, come to this bookend, and what are the key things to consider when we are talking about this other bookend? Like not how not to get lost in the chaos of the coaching conversation, which can sometimes be very, very interesting chaos.
I'll say something. Is that okay, Komal?
Sure.
The last month when we spoke, we unpacked evoking awareness. Now, if you got all these awareness evoked in a client and this energy around it and new thinking, new awareness, something new showing up in evoking awareness, which seems to be an organic step from or two. So what do I want to do now with all this new awareness? I've got all this new energy, so what am I motivated to do next? What step or action do I want to take? So it's like an holistic, organic follow-on conversation that's going to happen when there's a whole lot of newness showing up. And sometimes clients are so in awe of their own growth in the session or their own discovery, they sometimes say, this was a very good session for me. I had lots of insights. I think I want to sit with this for a while. So I don't want to do any actions as yet. I don't feel ready as yet. So I'm going to think more about this. But even that, there's some questions around actions that we can help the client design the space of how are they going to give themselves time to think, or what will they do to give themselves this time to think. And in creating this time to think, what support do they need? Meaning, do you want to put this in your diary, or how would you go about creating this quiet space for you to think about it? And so the support, resources, conversation will follow that, all belonging to this core competency. So that's what I want to say. It's like a follow-on, right? I'm sure you would have noticed that, like from evoking awareness, something emerges in how we then begin to design actions. It's not a matter of what is the next step you want to take. It's like an organic flow. What are we designing together with the client? What are we partnering with the client to design that would best serve their growth and, of course, the measures of success, whatever they wanted from the session, the progress.
That's beautiful, Cindy. And the way you've connected it with 7, evoking awareness, and the words that you used, like with the awareness, the new energy emerges and new energy is created. So, this competency, then, of course, it does look like a natural order. And it seems like its purpose is to just channelize that energy which is created, or not just channelize, but also sort of let the client understand that this energy needs to be channelized in a direction. That something needs to be done with it. Otherwise, it's either going to dissipate or it is then going to create chaos and not be very, very useful. So this does seem like, okay, so what do we do with this new energy that's been created now? So let's just see where to use it or where to put it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's lovely when it shows up, right? Because energy in a session shows up differently for so many different clients. Like, there's no such a thing as all clients are going to jump and get excited and say, wow, you can see the energy change in them. Some would be quieter about it.
Hmm.
Like you would notice on the face, or they would use words around it, but it's softer, quieter, like, that's new to me. I didn't think about that as yet. Or I'm glad we're having this conversation because something here is showing up that I haven't thought about before. So the energy is subtle.
Yeah. Hmm. It again takes me to the same thing that the coach's presence to observe those energies, those changes, or to even notice that awareness is happening and now it's time to. So what happens when the client is showing up some new energy emerging? What would be the best way for the coach to take this forward? If
Hmm.
we do not go much into just the technicalities, but the art of it, because what I have noticed, and when I've been learning also, that sometimes it does get a little, very sort of edgy, or very not, very comfortable space to try and say that, okay, now where is it leading? So this part I feel is more like a artistic way to handle that. How do we now take this forward? So what
Hmm.
art of facilitating client growth is there?
Hmm. So, coaches, what do you think? Our coaches on the call, what do you think? What would take the movement from all this awareness and new energy and new thinking into some new doing?
Yeah.
Well, all this evoking awareness takes a client into more a being space. Yeah. And we can't just be if we're working on a big goal. We can for a while, but the huge part of coaching is results focused. It's you want to see the results of your goal. That's the heart of coaching. And so how do we make this movement, or what happens in this movement from the beingness there of the evoking awareness into the doing of designing actions? But there's another thing that happens in between, or could happen in between, right? Which is around, if all this new awareness is being evoked and there's some new thinking and some new kind of associated feelings. So the coach would question around, how do you feel about this new thinking that you've just done? Or there's a sense of beingness showing up and the thinking around the beingness, right? Either one showing up because it's the whole person of the client, there's different layers here. The questions would emerge to bring out different layers. Like if it's new thinking, then check in with how is the client feeling about that. And sometimes client may say excited or a sense of relief that, I'm not alone in this. I feel a sense of relief that I came to this new awareness, or I'm figuring out that this was not so difficult after all. I'm not such a big procrastinator like I thought I was, This is something that looks quite doable now for me. Now, in that conversation, you get a sense that, of course, you can explore a little bit more. Like if you notice the emotion of how you're feeling is sitting somewhere in the client, you can ask a question around that. Sounds like this is sitting somewhere in you. Where is it sitting? Like where are you feeling that relief?
Hmm.
You've got butterflies in your tummy. What is happening with that? So you can do a bit of exploration around that. And of course, in this conversation, you would notice the newness may be showing up like an insight or a learning or a discovery or a new skill. like something there is showing up, a strength. It doesn't need to always be a learning. It could be different kind of words, depending on the language of you and your client, how you're communicating. So there's some learnings that could show up, some skills, some new capabilities, some new capacities, something there that you want to invite the client into that space.
Hmm.
Yeah. And also, what in this new learning can help the client with the goal they're working on? Or what about this learning? Or how will this learning help the client with the goal they're working on? And if you really want to be more exploratory as a coach, there's one more question you could explore with the client around where else they could use this new learning or this new skill, like, systemic coaching, other areas of the client's life. And of
Hmm.
course, maybe the skill or it was a new practice the client wanted to move forward with, then you can check with him. So it sounds like an action is already emerging that you want to practice this regularly, this art of mindfulness, but doing a short meditation every morning. And I'm making this up as we go along, right? So whatever it is showing up, you can check with the client if there's a ritual or a practice. And if you look at that marker, it is around designing actions. So you together with the client are designing actions based on the context of what's coming out in from the client. And of course, what the client set as their measure of success or progress for the session, what they want to make progress on. So you're having this holistic conversation on designing action. It's not a one sentence. It is a good exploratory conversation.
Hmm.
I'd say one more thing and then keep quiet. Actions should have some level of more. It should be a little bit more. So, as you build your confidence around working with actions is not just doing, it should also include some feeling and beingness. Like, for example, a feeling question would be, how do you feel about this action you just taken? Or we've designed some actions here. How do you feel about that? Especially if it's new, there's something new, right? That the client is doing for the first time. You want to capture some emotion around it, the client's emotion. And of course, beingness around it, what would it mean if you like did some cold calling and found this 10 new clients in the next 2 weeks? What would that mean for you? Now, you don't need to ask everything. Ask as appropriate to you and the client.
Hmm. That's interesting, Cindy, because what we do and we sometimes notice others is also that by the time the coaching conversation comes to this stage, you know, it starts to become very regimented and asking simple kind of questions, but you bringing in a fact that, still it can continue in the same flavor of staying in touch with the feeling and sensing of the client even when they are discussing about the actions,
Yeah.
and even asking them that, okay, now that you feel the relief, where do you feel it, which is so interesting because normally when they feel stuck or they feel burdened or any somatic inquiry, it happens at the time when it seems to be like a problem or a challenge, but once it's resolved, we barely sort of make it a point to ask that, so how does that space feel like now? But to still continue to bring the same kind of inquiry in the space when the client is now moving towards the growth or now moving towards some sort of an action. I wonder
Hmm.
what more it will do for the clients, what more it will do for the person to stay in touch with their whole self in that moment.
It's beautiful, right? When we still can be in this organic flow of awareness and different layers of the client, like the whole body experience right till the end, you know?
Yes. Yes. Because most of the times it feels like, okay, now we are done with the coaching. Now we have to wind up. We have to ask these regimented questions, and then we have to bring it to a closure. And it feels like, okay, so this was sort of segmented into different sections. Whereas, it's like, okay, yeah, now we are still coming to that stage, but we do not let go of being the coach we're being, or holding the same space and relationship that we've been holding for the client so far. Amazing. Uh, okay, I see something
Yeah.
from Andrew, which is say, could it be that the organic tension within the client as a result of this new energy naturally exposes the reality of what is possible and the space to determine their next best step? Yeah.
Absolutely, spot on. What's
Oh,
possible, what opportunities are showing up.
yeah.
Hmm.
And Meryl is has given a point. You could
Oh,
ask,
yeah, it's
how long would
beautiful.
you like to stay in that space?
Yeah, because that's lovely partnering, right? You're offering it or inviting the client to decide.
Yeah, great. I saw a hand raised in between also. So I don't know if there was a question or wanted to share something. Can you just holding space to affirm their realization and accomplishment is key.
Absolutely.
Absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Because
See, I
that's
want
like
to,
exactly what
sorry.
you're saying is, in coaching, we talk about the potential of the client. That is like bringing out all the potential in the client. These light bulbs that were dull is now beginning to shine.
Yeah. Quite often, Cindy, I do get this question from coaches where they say that, the if we go to the core competency 8.1, where it says that coach invites or allows the client to explore progress towards what the client wanted to accomplish in the session. A lot of coaches feel like that, how do we interrupt the client in between what they are saying or what they're already talking about, and just bring in this, and they
Hmm.
feel some sort of a challenge around inviting or talking about progress. What do you have to say about this, like
Hmm.
what's happening in that space?
And yet we have an agreement, right, Kamal?
Yeah,
We agreed we're holding the session for the goal, measures of success, and what's getting in the way, and we're going to explore all these elements in the
yeah,
session. We have an agreement. Drop your uncomfortableness around that because you're holding the space for what you and the client agreed on, how progress was going to happen in the session, what elements you were going to discuss. Clients will appreciate that.
hmm.
It is a coach discomfort, but most clients appreciate that question. You know, how are we doing so far? You wanted three new ideas and a new approach on something. How are we doing on that? Is there anything we still need to explore more on? Yeah, open that.
Hmm.
Follow on with that one question. When you ask one question to the client, it's an inquiry. Then you go
Yeah,
on to another question. It's like broken inquiry, inquiry, inquiry. When you do a follow on of something, like a follow on that point, it becomes an exploration. And exploration always opens up for more.
hmm. I like that, the way you brought it into, like, like, okay, one exploration, like, okay, so this area we wanted to explore, we have done this. Is it in line with what we agreed? What do you think? How does it show up to you? Okay, so what next do we want to explore? We go to that space and
Hmm.
say, okay, is this what you thought was good? So it's like
A
this
dance.
also, yeah. So looking at it like this also shows me that it's a natural space of the coach not knowing. what is the place to explore? What more is there to explore? And being in that space of not knowing and just partnering with the client and asking the client, okay, what do you think? Where does your intuition say we go next?
Absolutely.
What more do you have in your plate to explore? So let's go in that direction. And also sort of playing the role of a flag post, reminding that this is the goal that we're working towards. Do you think this is sort of in line with it? Or
Hmm. That's lovely, right? When we kind
yeah,
of,
so in a way, understanding this is helping the coach to become in a space of not knowing.
yeah, for the coach and for the client, the commitment to do that goal, to do the actions around that goal or that piece of the goal they're working on, whether it's a big goal, the commitment becomes more stronger. Like the change in them is beginning to happen towards their desired outcome. And the commitment to move there becomes more like more highlighted for them, more like self-responsible, self-accountable. There's a greater awareness to move towards their goal versus the question around, just that, as you said, a very structured kind of an approach. What is your next steps? Now, for the new coaches will ask that, they will do that. The new coaches, they still practicing the heart of coaching. And the more clients you coach, the better you get at certain skills. You take your own learnings and you get better and better at it. But as you're evolving and, building up your skill sets in coaching, the only way to kind of improve on yourself or get better with some skills is to do the heart of deliberate practice. Meaning, if you have a learning and you say, next time I'm going to do that with a client and see how it works, then go ahead, try that. Try a different kind of question. You'll know whether it works or not. You'll get a good sense of it. And if it doesn't, then you learn something different for the next time, right? You'll just be building muscles around coaching skills.
Yeah. That's the key of getting better. Continuous practice, bringing more creativity in what we do and just getting on with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved the way you explained about this 8.1 because it also shows that we are also helping the client build the accountability muscle by keeping them on track or by continuously asking them about it. Though the accountability question shows up at a little bit later in 8.7, but they're already sort of practicing that by staying committed to that. Yes, I am committed to this particular goal. Nothing like great.
Absolutely. I love that, the self-accountability that shows up sometime in our clients when they go, no, I don't need any support with that. I can do that on my own, Oh, I don't want to tell anybody I'm doing that. I'm just going to do it and then they can see it, I've done that. Especially something that they've been managing for quite some time. And yet it was a big thing for them, a big goal to work on. So, in that client, it's lovely to acknowledge their self-accountability, I'm hearing there's some things here that you want to manage on your own, and I'll acknowledge the self-accountability in you, and then open that question. Is there any other accountability structures you want to design for yourself? Now, you don't have to always use that big word, accountability structures. You can use other words like, as you're making progress on these actions, what kind of support, resources you would need, and you can build around that.
Yeah, it's maybe just a simple like like how will you ensure that you're doing what you're doing? Or
Absolutely, yeah. Language of you and client.
yeah, great.
But think about this question. I hear so many coaches ask this. Like, it was not even aligned to what the client was saying. Here was this client so energized and um, driven to move forward and get it done. Like the client walked out of the room, you get a sense of going to do the action immediately. And here would the coach be asking, and who can hold you accountable? Like, maybe there is a place for that question, but figure out for yourself, when should you ask that?
Right.
You get a sense some clients are self-accountable or they good with some things. Hold back on that question, then who can hold you accountable? Because you get a sense the client is holding themselves accountable. And open the question into designing accountability structures. Because that word shows up there, right?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. Because it says design the best method of accountability for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like what the research says is most accountable. It keeps you most accountable. It's the person know what works best for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Person-centered.
Great. George is saying, interesting, love the semantic questions, examples of what a client's response might be that would indicate they are ready to commit to an action plan. Yeah. Okay. Right. Any other questions, people? We see a lot of silence, so I don't know what to take out of that. Are you reflecting? Are you around this competency?
And what about that lovely one, Komal? Coach celebrates the client's progress and learning.
And
That's
learning. Yes.
beautiful marker,
Yes.
right?
And it says celebrates.
Because we
What does
all are
celebrate?
cheerleaders of our clients, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like just praise and say in words that, okay, so to me, celebrates means like not just saying in words that, I'm really appreciative or you did very well. Celebrates is like a very, very wholesome, very inclusive kind of response to your client, right? So to
So
me,
is
it's like,
the celebrate the client's progress and learning. Yeah.
yep,
Quite like, it's not a matter of wow, brilliant, and moving on. Yeah.
yeah,
Something more here. The coach celebrates the client's progress and learning. So you're saying something about the progress and learning your client made, even if your client just had a simple insight or you noticed the capacity for something had changed in the session. They were more open to it, or there were more possibilities and options are showing up, something more. So you want to celebrate even the little step your client made, or notice their progress around that.
yeah. And to me, how it looks, Cindy, now that I'm reflecting on it, it's like with my children. Whenever I see them learning something new or doing something a little different from how they do it, it's like, even if it's like the minuscule of thing, it's a matter of joy. And I would tell it to them that, wow, this is something very nice. I notice you do it for the first time. It's pretty good. What do you think about it? And just mentioning it and bringing it into their attention and letting them know that this is something to be joyful about, this is something to be proud of, or this is something to be to be very, very happy about, is, I don't know what it does, but I think it just naturally motivates them or naturally directs them towards their own growth.
Yeah.
So that way, I think that celebration is a very, very important piece that is in here. And honestly, I didn't think of it like that before our today's conversation, because must have read it like celebrates the progress in learning. But now looking at it from that perspective is also like, also sort of bringing out, what is worth celebrating and what needs to be celebrated, so that we know that, yes, so that we take away that, yes, okay, so this is the small thing that is more
So,
important than anything else.
so Kumar, when I was practicing, I'm just going to tell you a little story. When I was practicing for my MCC, and at that time, of course, there was no mentoring. It wasn't a part of credentialing, right? So my children were teenagers at that point, and quite outspoken ones too. So I would kind of practice pieces around how to close a session. What could I say to a client? And I practiced little pieces on my children without them knowing what I was doing. At least they say they did, but I think not. And so I used to go, wow, that was great. You did so well in that assignment. I would say that, right? And they would go, I don't think so. I could have done better. Look at the pieces that I missed or something, right? And then I realized one day that wasn't landing well. So, what can I do that makes it land better?
Mm.
So, I'm always noticing how things land on the other person, how it sits with them. And then I would question myself on how I would do it differently next time. So then I began to do that partnered approach. I noticed you really did well here, and congratulations or something like that. And how do you feel about the progress you made?
Yeah.
Because that's what they were saying to me. No, I could have done it better. So I thought, let me ask this in a more partnered way. And then I realized, now there's something really good here, because the client now pays attention, or the
Yes.
other person you're asking it to is paying attention to, noticing what they also did well.
Yes. Even in the way of saying that I could have done it better, is there an acknowledgement that I did it well, I did it good?
Yes, yeah.
But I
But
have
yet,
it's an acknowledgement of my own potential that I could have done better. And that's the whole point. And I think teenagers are the best to practice learning something. I get that with my own teenage daughter as well. That's the typical response. I don't think so.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But it draws some awareness in us about our own language and how we're coming across and how we could do it differently.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think, and but still, that statement that, yeah, I could have done it better is better than I did whatever I could.
Hmm.
Or I think I did best. That's like, though on the surface it may seem like self acknowledgement, but there's something hidden behind it.
Yeah, and there's an openness to learning there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So capture it and ask another question, and yeah, can explore it more.
Yeah.
So I in coaching, I kind of always am drawn to combine 8.8 and 8.9. The coach partners with the client on how they want to complete the session. So kind of, we at the end of our time, and I'd like to acknowledge the progress you made today, and I'll pick up on some learnings and insights or something that I noticed about the session, and then invite the client into that. Is there anything, or what is it you would like to acknowledge in the progress you made?
Mm.
Or how do you want to acknowledge yourself for the progress you made? Depending on what we're working, sometimes it's more what driven and sometimes it's more who driven. And yeah, and so then we can move to, we're at the end of our time. Is there anything else you want to pick up or hold for next week or something like that as we close the session for today?
Mm-hmm.
So I find that the process works really well when combined 8.8 8 and
8 and
8.9. It's a
8.9.
partnered conversation. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And I also noticed that it's even like having the client speak about or having the client acknowledge their own process, their own journey, or what they've learned or what they're taking away from them,
Hmm. Absolutely.
instead of just the
Absolutely.
coach sort of showering them with appreciations by the end of it. I think it's
Yeah.
more important that they start to acknowledge themselves.
Yeah. Their words of celebration, right, is
Yes.
equally important than
Yes.
just the client's words of celebration, just the coach's words. And Kamal,
So,
we've been mostly holding the space on progress of a session. There's also reviews, after every few sessions if you're doing a long-term coaching contract. So you can do reviews of the learning and how the client is progressing, like every few sessions, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. Again, that's just an agreement that you would have upfront with client, or has you and client see, but let's review our progress for the last few sessions, and especially if they're working on a bigger goal.
mhm. Yeah, and that review like looks more like just focused on this, like how they think that they've grown, or yes, it's like
Absolutely.
yeah, it's like expanding the entire conversation just alone on this, that okay, today we're only going to talk about what learnings and what growth you've seen in yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in a longer coaching relationship, this can be very, very powerful, that although we are doing it slowly, gradually in every session,
Yeah.
but just
Because
to
clients
give just
evolve,
the
right?
focus. Yes.
Yeah. Like if you just take the life of a coach going through coach training, as you go through pieces of the training, you evolve and you change, and there are different things about you that shows up. So even a client going through a coaching journey, if you stopped every few sessions and did some kind of a review with them as per your agreements,
Hmm.
it's quite a powerful process, because then you also get to learn about how the client is changing, or what is changing in the client during the process.
Yes. And I think the importance of it lies in, like, as coaches, we always see and notice and observe because that's what we are doing. But does the client also acknowledge and notice and see their own change? Are they also sensing the same things? Are they sensing something new or something different? And
Yeah.
how are they even putting it in words? What is their narrative around that change? And because that's very important.
So
I
Deepa, I
see.
hear you asking a question around how do you handle time while asking all these questions. But that's a bit of a tricky one. And again, um, time is per coach and client. Now, if there was a real organic, deeper conversation happening, you and you notice that we may need 5 minutes more, ask the client permission for some extra time. Maybe it'll be okay with the client. The client has an art stop and you haven't, so do you. Then you can also offer to pick up some pieces in the next conversation you're having with the client, the next coaching session. Also, allow yourself enough time to have that last bit of that conversation. Don't, if you've been the coach that rushes through it, now take a bit more time for that. Allow yourself more time, see how that goes. You'll soon figure out the rhythm of you and your client and how things work. You'll very soon figure that out for yourself.
There's also a very interesting question, Cindy, which I would like to take from Sujata. She says, a client of mine is aware of the fact that she's looking for endorsements often from her ecosystem, and she's called it out herself. I see myself wondering if I should celebrate or applaud her small wins more often or not.
What do you think, Komal?
Um, I think, irrespective of what the client is seeking, because what the client is seeking is, I think, and when the client is also self-aware, is something to be explored more with the client, that that what's making this person seek more endorsement from the ecosystem or from the people around, and how is it helping her, or is it how is it working out in her own experience, and what happens if she doesn't receive those kind of endorsements from around. Does it become a limiting factor for her? So these are, I think, a few things to be explored,
The
and
client.
with the client. And the coach's dilemma also I understand, because being naturally empathic, sometimes what happens is you are at a subconscious level, you are aware of what your client is needing right now, and you would be wanting to give it to them. And but more important is also to be aware that, is it really going to help your client in that moment by just fulfilling their need, or by making them more aware of their own need and what it is making them do. It's like having a distinction between whether you're feeding into the void of somebody, or you're just helping that person grow up and grow out. And for me, the answer comes again from being with my children. I think they are my teachers. I like draw a lot of learnings from how I'm being with them. Is sometimes I know that they just seek attention, right? But I need to see in that moment that whether just feeding into their need right now is going to help them, or is just going to deepen the void that they have in them. And I think for that, the best is to stay aware in the moment, because sometimes you need to hold back and say that I will appreciate you when I know something that really, really genuinely need to be appreciated, and that's what you need to learn. And some other days you just need to sit back and just give them your attention, because that is what they need, and they can't move forward, or or they are crumbling down, right?
Hmm.
So I think if my just patting on their back and giving them attention is building them up, fine, I'll do that. If my holding back and restraining and being a little stern is helping them build up, I'll do that.
Yeah,
So there is
it's
no,
it's yeah. There's no one size fits all, right?
yeah,
And you're right. It's an intuitiveness of the coach in partnering with the client that either would want to do the acknowledgement, or you want to open the conversation of it.
yeah.
I know one recently another coach was practicing with me. I was the client and practicing mentor to the coach. So I was the client and they were coaching. And there was this whole lot of acknowledgements too often. That went like, I appreciate, every time I shared something, it was I acknowledge or I appreciate or something like that. And it was like, I notice everything in coaching. So this was like every 5 to 7 minutes, a new thing was coming around that. And there was a point when I was so annoyed. Like I was saying to myself, not to be rude to this coach, but if one more comes my way, I'm going to like, you're going to see a different reaction on my face, and not a client driven reaction. Because it can be, I mean, so I'm asking myself this question: what makes you think I need all this acknowledgement? What makes you think that you keep acknowledging me like I'm so needy? I don't need the acknowledgement. I need to grow and see myself shift to something new in the session.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah.
So that's a lovely point you made. And yeah, it just drew my attention to my own example around that. I did give the coach feedback after that, but I went through the session with all that acknowledgement and not saying anything about it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
And again, teenagers help in that matter because sometimes they would genuinely be fishing for acknowledgement, fishing for compliment, fishing for appreciation. And that same
Yeah,
thing happens sometimes with our clients too, because they
absolutely.
know that coaches hold that kind of space for them, that they'll be heard, they'll be appreciated and admired. So if that is all that they are seeking, I don't think there is any growth that is happening in that moment.
Yeah, I
So,
love that that marker is associated with something, right?
yes,
Celebrates is associated with something,
yes,
learning and growth,
and progress. Yes,
progress. Yeah,
yeah,
learning and progress.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So I think that's very interesting, that put on your microscopic glasses and read the language very clearly and understand.
Absolutely.
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 Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one more question by Hussein. He said, can I request for another example for 8.3 who and 8.3 what? So I think he's saying basically 8.2 and 8.3 difference,
But what
which
is
is
the client learning about? An invitation to notice what the or state or notice what the client state or explore what the client is learning about themselves, and how will
about
this learning help them with the
situation.
situation or their goal, whatever is applicable. Yeah. So it's when you're noticing those moments that more is showing up. Yeah. And you're picking up that as a coach and you're inviting the client. It sounds like as you were reflecting, there was something more showing up. Is there anything new that's showing up, or a new skill or a learning, whatever word you want to use there? You can invite the client into that space.
Hmm.
And sometimes you would notice that in the moment of silence, something else is going on, right? And you can get curious about that and even check with the client. I'm getting a sense there was something in that silence. What was it? Or what happened in that silence, or something like that? Because there's an opportunity there for the client to share something that's brewing inside them or stirring up inside them.
Hmm.
So the who is learning about the person. What are you learning about yourself? And you don't always have to use this word learning. And the what is the situation, like I want to get 10 new clients or better relationship with my team. It's the what. How will this learning about you help you with the what or the situation?
Hmm.
And there's one more expansive question, the next one. And is there any other area of your life that you feel would benefit from this learning?
So these three questions, seem to me like expanding from inside out. It's
Absolutely.
like in the first step, you notice that am I changing within? Like what is happening within me? And then you come to the immediate thing that you've been noticing, that by virtue of something changing in me, is my point of view now shifting, or is that my narrative shifting for what or how I've been looking on this thing earlier? And then we expand it further and say that, okay, so does this narrative impact the other areas of my life? It's like from within, you're now sort of taking your learning outwards and see how sort of it happens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's lovely, yeah, when we do this kind of exploration of pieces of
Yeah.
competencies and markers. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yes. And I
Coaches have
think
been very quiet. They've been very
yeah.
quiet today. Are you reflecting, or you? What's in your quietness?
Yeah, even I'm wondering that. Okay, so we are getting a lot of thank yous, not too many questions.
Yeah.
So Angela is saying, I'm reflecting on the idea of challenging the client.
Huh. I think one of these days we must open our webinars and do some practice pieces during the webinars. That'd be interesting, right, Komal? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Little
absolutely.
pieces of practice as we go through webinars. We can have more connection with each other also.
Yes. That's beautiful. Cindy,
So,
anything?
Komal, we're at the end. Unless there's any other thoughts brewing that, I mean, I can't think of any right now.
I think what's coming up for me is that, and that comes from because I'm also facilitating for a cohort, and then I notice certain things. So sometimes it happens that when we talk about the competency 8 or facilitating client growth, naturally the mind focus goes more onto the actions and talking about the action items, and then learning sort of is left behind. And I feel like action is not concrete till the time it's not sort of linked. The awareness is not linked with the learnings in between, and unless we've explored that, what that awareness has done to the person within. So I think that's a very, very important part and piece, and I think more important part and piece than giving more time into what are they going to do and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
So
very insightful. That's very insightful. So I'll just say this in a short way. You don't want your client to come to the session with exactly what they've already been thinking about their goal, right? And then they would, and when you ask what's your next step, they would give you the same thinking. Yeah. Then you've got to ask yourself this question as a coach: what was different for the client in the session? Yeah. So exactly what you're saying, there's more going on, and the client is going to leave with more if you do more exploratory work.
exactly.
Interesting. It's lovely when we partner. Bubbles begin to emerge and we can blow it in all directions.
So Angela is saying pushing them to not get stuck in the celebration and willingness to push to the next level. I don't know. I don't understand the observation. Angela, would you like to describe it a little? What exactly you wanted to say? We still have got like 1 minute to close.
Willingness to push to the next level. Get stuck in the celebration and willingness to push to the next level. Or you mean the coach in the partnering with the client? Is that what you mean, Angela? Yeah, that's what you meant. Okay, and I'm hearing you say push like a common language or easy language. It'll be more in the session evoking or gently challenging, whatever it shows up. Yeah. So we've had quite an interesting conversation, Komal.
I do. I have had a lot of different sort of visual anchors related to these competencies for me. I hope it would be the same for the the participants who are with us. But thank you so much, Cindy. It's been wonderful for me. I've got
Been
some
wonderful
new.
for me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So coaches, I hope it was good for you. And we're gonna see you all next week on the Masters in Coaching webinar.
Okay, let's see if
Hmm.
Magda wants to come in for some bit.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for your acknowledgement. It's much appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you all. So I think we can close this, Cindy.
Yeah, I think so too. Bye everyone.
Okay, bye everyone. See you next
Bye.
week.